Welcome to our webinar, everyone. We're really excited to welcome you to USA College Day 2018. This webinar is a taster to introduce you to US admissions and will prepare you with what you need to know going into college days so that you can maximize the time that you spend having really useful conversations with admissions reps about their universities. My name is Kirsty Callaghan, and I am the Communications Manager at the US-UK Fulbright Commission, as well as one of the Education USA advisors there. Our job as Education USA advisors is to help UK students get to US universities through providing free, comprehensive, impartial advice and supporting you through the process. I spent 1 year of my undergraduate degree in the US and then returned to do my master's for 2 years there before working for a non-profit for 1 year as part of my student visa extension. So I'm certainly passionate about helping other UK students explore US study and particularly some of the roads less traveled. So during this webinar, we'll be covering how US universities are different to UK universities. We'll be talking a little bit about the concept of liberal arts and what this means for US higher education. We'll cover the basics about the types of US university that you might be applying to, and we'll think about how the US admissions process works and what they're looking for from students who apply. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about how funding works for international students. I just want to point out the pretty picture there. This is the campus of Denison University in Ohio, which happens to be one of the universities that you can meet at College Day. So we'll start with a good question. What makes US universities so different to UK universities? Well, we can start with an obvious one. As I'm sure you all know, undergraduate degrees in England and Wales are usually 3 years long. And at the end, you come out with a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. Whereas in the US, an undergraduate degree is usually 4 years long, and you graduate with the same qualification, a bachelor's degree, as you do in the UK. Another difference is the range and variety of US institutions. There are 4,500 universities in the US compared to just 120 here in the UK. But there are also some other major differences. The first difference can be summed up by the concept of freedom. US universities really do hold to this core American value. The US system has freedom and flexibility really built into it throughout the process. US universities expect their students to take a variety of classes across a range of subjects. So all students are expected to do this, which means that US degrees are really flexible and you can build your own personalized degree as you go. I'm sure many of you will have heard of choosing a major, but did you know that most students go into a university not sure what they're going to study for their degree? They'll take lots of general classes and then in the second half of their degree specialize in one or potentially 2 subjects. The fact that there are those 4,500 universities does allow for an enormous diversity between them in size, cost, and personality. But all of this freedom can be a little bit tricky for us, however. Unlike UK universities, there's no UCAS, and each university sets its own fees, application deadlines, and processes, so you do need to stay organised. Sometimes we suggest that students keep a spreadsheet if that's how you work, and that way you can keep a track of all of those things so that you don't get muddled in the process. Another big difference to the UK system is what's called the holistic admissions process. So if you apply to a UK university, you might be looking to study chemistry, for example, at the University of Bristol. So you'll apply to the University of Bristol, but it'll be the people in the chemistry department who are going to read your application. And they'll be focused when they're reading your application on the grades that you've received so far and your predictions. in the US, you'll be applying not to a specific department, but to the university as a whole, with a couple of rare exceptions. This means that the admissions officer will be looking to understand you as a student studying any discipline at that university. They will be interested in your grades, but also all the other things that make you you. So your hobbies, sports, passions, your circumstances, and all the other things that make who you are. This means that some highly selective colleges regularly turn down people with straight A stars. It's not just about the grades. It also means that your application to US universities is going to cover many more things than a UK university application will, which will be mainly concerned about why you're a good student for a particular degree subject. The third thing that's really important to know about US universities, that the key to admissions is about something called fit. You might hear the admissions reps at College Day talk about this. Fit is about whether you are the right student for that university. What can you offer them, both inside and outside of the classroom? This does, of course, work in both ways. You have to be a good fit for the university, but they also have to be a good fit for you. So part of that process is about answering for yourself, why is this university right for me? And the answer that some British students give, because I have good grades and I've heard of that university, is not going to get you admitted. It's about understanding what each university is looking for. And so it's really important that you learn how to read the different personalities of each university. Because what makes someone a good fit for UCLA might mean that they are a bad fit for Yale. And funding, finally, is a key part of fit. So if securing funding is going to be essential for you to be able to study in the US, then you have to bear this in mind as you do your research. And not all US universities do offer funding to international students. Let's just cover those points. Okay. Focus in on a key concept that underpins American higher education, and that's the idea of the liberal arts curriculum. This is the model which all US universities use to teach at the undergraduate level. It goes back to the idea of flexibility for students, but also ties into the idea that US universities believe that being well-rounded and able to understand a bit about different subjects, perspectives, ways of thinking makes for better world citizens, and that you benefit from a breadth of knowledge compared to the UK, where we become specialists in one area. As I said, students often enter university undecided on what they might study for their degree, but students are encouraged to be open-minded and flexible as they begin their studies. So they'll spend the first 2 years of their undergraduate degree studying that broad range of subjects. So a student might take a math class, a history class, an art class, and a language. They have the chance to explore a wide range of subjects, including a load of subjects that they might not even know exist when they begin at the university. So even if you love maths, the US system is founded on the idea that you might also benefit from taking Mandarin or music classes. The flexibility of the liberal arts process allows you to see the interconnections between different subjects. So after doing 1.5 to 2 years studying that range of topics, you'll be required to pick one subject, which is called your major. And this is the subject or subjects for a double major that you specialize in. And some students choose to pick their major sooner, but will still be required to take classes in those other areas. Some US universities have a set curriculum that all first-year students take that's very structured and quite strict. For example, Columbia University. Others on the other end of the spectrum allow students to choose any subjects whatsoever, such as Grinnell College in Iowa, for example. And many are somewhere in between these 2 points, and will have distribution or general education requirements that say students have to take a certain number of classes in quantitative subjects, in art subjects, and in languages. Is another way to think about liberal arts. I'll give you a moment to look at that. There are two main types of institution for your US study. The first is the liberal arts colleges. These are universities that focus on undergraduate students, and there are no or very few graduate students in liberal arts colleges. So that means the undergraduate classes are always taught by professors, and they often recruit undergraduate students to help them with their research, meaning you can not only get lots of individual attention, but also the chance to get published. Liberal arts colleges are generally between 2,000 and 7,000 students, and a lot of impressive, famous people went to one of them, including Hillary Clinton, who went to Wellesley College in Massachusetts. Research universities tend to be bigger institutions and are great if you want to be on a larger campus with more students and some of the opportunities that come with that. They have both undergraduate students and graduate students, and maybe more the universities that you're likely to have heard of. Universities will be private or public. Public ones are funded by the state, while private universities are, you guessed it, funded privately, often through endowments. And there's enormous diversity and variety even between private universities. Private institutions include small liberal arts colleges like Middlebury and Grinnell, but also large research universities like the University of Southern California and NYU. It is more common for public universities to have larger student populations, but there are several larger private universities as well. It's not pictured here, but community colleges are another choice for some students, and they can be a really good option for those who are trying to keep the costs down. And while they perhaps for some of us might have a reputation as being more focused on vocational subjects, many students spend 2 years gaining credits in academic classes and are able to then transfer directly to the four-year universities that these community colleges have agreements with to finish the remaining 2 years and end up with a bachelor's degree at the end of it. So that's worth considering as well. We do have a community college who will be exhibiting at. So what are universities looking for in their admissions process? Well, the first thing they'll want to know about is students' grades from the equivalent of the high school years. So for us, approximately years 10 to 13. So they want to know our GCSEs, A-levels, Highers, Advanced Highers, or IB. And the person who reads your application will understand UK qualifications and will be comparing you to all the other people who have done these same exams. It's worth bearing that in mind. But they will also want to know about your academic potential, sometimes assessed through standardized tests. So that's the ACT or the SAT, if they require that in their application. Why do they sometimes ask for these? Well, in the US, there's no national curriculum and no national exam boards. So it can be really hard for admissions counselors to compare two students, even within the US, whether an A from a certain school in Chicago, Illinois, is the same as an A from a school in Cheyenne, Wyoming, or between Alabama and Alaska. So these tests therefore allow for some degree of standardization. And for the same reason, US universities will sometimes ask for these scores from international students as well. But it's worth noting that not all of them do. So make sure you find out before you go and sit them whether you're going to need those scores to apply to the universities that you're interested in. It doesn't matter which test you take, they are accepted equally. So you just have to figure out which one works for you. So take a practice test, get a feel for the style of the questions, and see how you do and which one you prefer. Generally speaking, we suggest taking these tests in the spring before the autumn in which you'll be applying, so that you have the option to retake in the autumn if you need to. If you are looking to apply this autumn winter, then don't worry. You know, it's still possible to take them now, but we just say if it's an option, then it's a good idea to take the tests in the spring or summer before. So the admissions counsellors will look at your admissions test scores and your grades, predicted grades, and we call these the gatekeepers. So if they aren't what the university is looking for, what they need, then you'll go straight into the rejection pile. But that's not the only thing they're looking at. So if your grades do pass that first examination, they'll then look at these less tangible parts of your application. They'll consider your extracurricular involvement. So what are you doing and how long have you been doing it? They'll be looking at your character and your personality. So essentially, what are you like as a human being? What will you be like on campus as a student at the university? Are there things that make you unique or special or different? They'll want to know about the context in which you've achieved these things, and will want to know why you want to attend that university. So how you are a good fit for that institution. Okay, so what does that process then look like? First, you're going to be researching universities, keeping open-minded and flexible to find those good fit institutions. Next, you're going to connect with admissions officers. So unlike here in the UK, US admissions officers are often happy to get to know students before they apply. They really like you to demonstrate your interest. And at College Day, you'll have a great opportunity to do just that, but it is an ongoing process. Then in the autumn or winter of year 13, you'll put together your applications and will submit them to the universities. In some cases, you may then get an invite to be interviewed by an alumnus of the university here in the UK. But these do tend to be very relaxed and informal. Most of the ones that I've heard about have been in Cafe Nero or over Skype, and they're not trying to catch you out. These are just opportunities for them to get to know you. Then the admissions officers will read your applications, and an admissions committee will decide who they want to admit, and then they'll release decisions to students. So what are the different admissions decisions you might receive? There are three different decisions you might get. The first one is a decline. This, unsurprisingly, is a rejection. Or you might get an accept, which would mean that the university wants to admit you, which is fantastic. But you may want to wait to hear about your financial aid package before you decide that's definitely where you're going to be going. And finally, there's something called the waitlist. And the waitlist is a list of the students that the university likes enough to potentially consider admitting, but not so much that they're able to admit them right now. It's a tool that they can use to manage their enrollments. So if fewer accepted students take up their places than are offered them, the university can have a look to see if there are any students that they still want to admit on the waitlist at the end of the admissions cycle. We also want to touch briefly on US Office of Admission. So in the UK, if you are offered a place to read history at the University of Liverpool, you might be asked for grades in your A-levels of, let's say, AAB. On results day, if you don't achieve those results, then the University of Liverpool can say, sorry, you haven't made your grades and you may not have your place. So your offer is conditional. In the US, however, because of the way that US high school grades work, it means that you can think of US university offers as a bit like unconditional offers. And it's because they've gone to all of that trouble to admit you holistically, your offer of admission isn't strictly about your final grades. So if you've been predicted that AAB and you have that offer of admission from a US university, then as long as you continue to work hard and achieve somewhere near those grades, then you should be fine. So if you're predicted AAB and you get a BB, then that in most cases would not be an issue for a US university. But of course, if you do significantly miss your predictions, it would be a different story. So now we're going to take a look at the elements that make up a US application. First of all, you're going to have an application form, which will contain biographical details about you, so name, contact details, but also information about your education, siblings, parents, and so on. As part of this form, you'll also have a space to add in your extracurriculars. What are you doing, how long for, and what impact does it have? You'll have space for an essay, which will be a personal piece of writing, but this is absolutely not the time to copy and paste your UCAS personal statement. These are very, very different pieces of writing. For each university, you'll probably be asked to add supplemental essays, 2 on top of that main essay, and we'll talk more about those in a moment. And you'll also probably be asked to fill out a financial aid form. This is a form that takes a very deep level look at the resources available to your family, and we'll talk more about that later as well. There'll also be an academic transcript that your school will put together for you, which is essentially a listing of your exams and your grades, and your school will also use it to share your predicted grades with an explanation of how they've decided what those predictions will be, how they've arrived at that. And we do have a helpful guide on our website to how to put a transcript together to assist your school in this process. You'll include your ACT or SAT scores if the university needs them, and your teachers will put together 3 letters of recommendation or reference letters, 2 of which will be from teachers who actually teach you, talking about you as a student in their classroom. The 3rd letter will be from someone called your school counsellor in American terms. And so for British students, this tends to be someone like your head of 6th form, careers advisor, maybe your personal tutor, which will talk about you as a student within your school and a member of your school community. And you won't see any of these letters before they're submitted to the university. If you want to showcase your art, performance art, or technical drawing skills, you might submit a portfolio. And this is America, so there will be an application fee for each university. You apply to usually in the range of $50 to $100, but some universities may offer a fee waiver depending on your circumstances. So you're going to submit this for each university that you apply to, and then pat yourself on the back. So we're going to focus a little bit on those supplemental questions that I mentioned. These are shorter questions set by each university that you're applying to, and they'll ask you something to learn more about you and how you think, or to get at why you're interested in that university specifically. So let's look at a few examples. So Brandeis University is a top college very close to Boston with a strong sense of social justice. You'll notice before I start that each of these supplementary questions reflects the personality of each university. So I'll give you a moment to read the ones from Brandeis. The University of Chicago is well known for its quirky off-the-wall questions. It's a chance to show off your perspective on the world as well. So you might approach that first one, find X, from a mathematical perspective, or it might be about a treasure map. These essays are really to show the admissions person who you are, not to tell them, but to show them. Dartmouth College is in New Hampshire and is well known for its outdoorsy students. So if you're not into hiking in forests, then it might not be a great fit for you, but to another applicant, it might sound great. And they ask this question. Okay, so I just want to head back to the idea of extracurriculars. These are a really important part of your application, and they will help you stand out in an application pool of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. They're also a really important part of showing who you are. So ideally, you should have several activities and ones that you've focused on for some time. It's much more powerful to have been doing something for several years than just a few weeks or a couple of months. And we do see a lot of students giving up on activities after year 11. Maybe because they're changing schools, but if that is you, then there's still time to change it. And a useful concept to think about where extracurriculars are concerned is the impact of your activity. So Going to the gym is activity or walking your dog, but it isn't very impactful. Tutoring younger students, starting a club, or doing some fundraising, playing competitive sports well, or leadership activities like being head student, by contrast, are going to look much more impressive. It's worth also mentioning that caring for siblings or parents, relatives, is definitely an extracurricular and something that you should mention, as well as having a part-time job, which shows that you're responsible and committed. So that's also a good idea as well. So don't be afraid to be you. Your list absolutely should reflect who you are, and it's going to be different to the person sitting next to you. And in a lot of ways, the more interesting these activities are, the better. I do know of one student who, in his extracurriculars list, detailed his bell ringing hobby, and you can be sure that that admissions counsellor didn't see many applicants who spent their weekends or evenings bell ringing. So if you have something unusual, now is your opportunity to shout about it. A couple of final points about that admissions process. You will be applying to US universities in the autumn or winter of year 13, but the earlier that you can start doing your research and prep, the better. You will then find out your decisions usually in December for the early round or March in the regular round. You'll make your final decisions in April and be enrolled in May to then begin in August or September. So what do I mean by early round? Well, there are two types of decision, two main types of decision, early decision and regular decision. Most Americans will be applying regular decision, so applying to several universities at once and then picking between any decisions that they might get back from that. But early decision happens earlier in the autumn, and essentially it is a strategic move to increase your chance of admission. So you apply to just one university as your early admission choice, and you enter a legally binding contract to say that if they admit you, then you will attend. Only exception being if the financial aid package that they offer you is unworkable for your circumstances, but it's a binding decision. But there are far fewer applicants in the early decision round, so you're competing against a smaller pool. It can increase your chances of admission as well as make you more competitive for financial aid. So it can be a really good strategic move for some students. There's also something called rolling admissions, where a university doesn't have a set application deadline, but will keep accepting applications until they've filled up their class of 2023. But you'll also need to remember that this whole process is very different to UCAS. You're going to need different things at different times. One big difference is that you can, in theory, apply to as many universities as you like in the regular round. But for time and cost reasons, we normally recommend you should be aiming for 6 to 10 well thought out and researched choices. We have spent some time talking about the applications and how each application is made up of lots of different parts, but over 600 universities have joined together to create something called the Common Application, or Common App. You might have seen this term used on university websites. And the Common App allows students to input things like the biographical data, transcript, references, and main essay just once. It's not quite like UCAS because there's still extra supplemental questions and essays for each university you're applying to, but it can save some time, and it's worth bearing in mind that not all universities, however, do use the Common App. For example, if you're applying to the University of California system or the University of Texas state system, you'll have different applications to complete. So, how to be successful in the application process. In summary, You want to make sure that you do your research to find your fit. This is one area that we see British students fall down on time and time again. Your task is to be looking out for universities that sound amazing to you, ones where hearing about what the students get up to and what the vibe on campus is like make you really excited, not ones that you've heard of but otherwise feel a bit lukewarm about. Remember that this journey is going to be highly personal. Your good fit is going to be different from someone else's, and that is exactly how it should be. You will need to learn how to be reflective throughout this whole process and be thinking early on about things like your extracurriculars and involving your school. You're going to need their help for the transcript and for the letters of recommendation, and you want to make sure you're giving them plenty of lead time to get all of these things in, so do involve them in the process. You absolutely do need to be open-minded and flexible, and remember that your best fit might be a university that you've never heard of, or in a place you've never heard of. Don't be too modest. Americans are good at talking about their achievements, so don't be shy. And the same goes for your teachers' letters of recommendation as well. And being successful is all about being strategic, especially if you're going to be seeking serious amounts of money in scholarships and in financial aid. And be yourself. There's no point ending up at university that's a great fit for some other person that you've created the image of. It should be a good fit for you. Now, before we can think about how to afford a US education, we first have to know how much it costs. And this is a question that we get asked a lot at the Fulbright Commission, especially from parents. Well, the truth is that costs can vary significantly from university to university, from place to place, and there are no standard government set fees as there is in the UK. So instead, each university is free to set its own tuition and fees rates. The numbers here are based on a group of universities that are broadly equivalent to the Russell Group, but many cost more than this and many cost less. It is hard to get averages, but this is a general idea of the differences in costs between the US and the UK. US universities are legally required to put on their websites the cost of attendance, or COA. That's not just their tuition fees, but their estimated cost for rent, food, books, sometimes travel, phone, as well as any other university set fees for things like use of the gym. The good news, however, is that this sticker price is not necessarily what all students end up paying. And as is the case in the UK, the living costs to go to the London School of Economics are going to be higher than at Manchester. So you need to think about rural, suburban, or urban when it comes to living in the US as well. What you can rent in New York versus Wyoming for the same amount of money will be vastly different. So what are those different costs made up of? So with estimated costs, there are some things that are fixed and direct costs, like tuition and fees. There's no flexibility on these. There are other things that are indirect costs, where there might be some room for wriggling. There might be ways to lower them, for example, buying secondhand books for your classes. And what support might be available? For UK students, the two main sources for funding a US university education are the US university and your family. So UK students, I should note, don't get funding from the US or UK government for study in the US. You cannot take your UK student loan with you. But that's okay. The reason is that there are many universities in the US that do offer funding to international students. So we'll start with the university financial aid and talk about that in more detail. So what is financial aid? It's basically any grant or scholarship, loan, or paid employment offered to help a student meet their college expenses. And the basic premise of financial aid is that students and parents are considered the primary source of funds and are expected to contribute to the extent that they are able. And the financing of a student's attendance at a US university is therefore seen as a partnership between the student's family and the institution. After a university determines what your family can afford to contribute, a financial aid package is how they then make up the difference if they are able to. And it's what they think you are able to pay and not what you are willing to pay. It's an important distinction. So a US university can provide, a US university that can provide need-based financial aid to international students will ask you to fill out a financial profile, usually the CSS form, to get a really detailed picture of your family's finances. They're then going to run those numbers against their own algorithms. Every university has a slightly different way of doing this. And then they'll calculate how much they think your family can afford to contribute, which is what they call the expected family contribution, or EFC. They'll then subtract that amount from their calculated cost of attendance, and they'll do what they can to make up the shortfall. So some universities are able to meet 100% of demonstrated need, while for others it may be a much lower percentage. And for some universities that are need aware or need sensitive in their admissions process, their ability to cover that shortfall may factor into their final admissions decision. But universities do have different policies on this. You'll want to make sure that you're looking at how financial aid works for international students while you're doing your research and not later on. Here's an example of Vassar College's financial aid page as an example. I'll give you a moment to read through that. See that they state that they are committed to meeting 100% of the demonstrated financial need of all admitted students. And you can use their net price calculator to get a sense of your eligibility for financial aid. Some other universities have similar tools that allow you to make these kinds of calculations as well. You can also speak to Vassar at College Day as well. So we've spent some time talking about need-based financial aid, but there are also, in some instances, merit-based scholarships. And these can vary in amount, but are based on your exceptional talents or qualities, maybe excellent grades, musical ability, athletic ability, that kind of thing. And if a university really wants you in their next graduating class and you possess one of these, they might be able to offer you a merit-based scholarship. And often you're automatically considered for these kinds of scholarships as part of the application process. But if there are additional scholarships the university or external organizations offer, you need to be aware of this well ahead of time so you can plan and prepare properly. There might be additional essays to submit, and so you want to make sure that you're tracking all of this so you don't miss any of those important deadlines. You can make yourself more competitive for funding by starting early, keeping good notes and about those deadlines and the universities that offer the kind of funding that you're looking for, because we do see it all too often here at the Fulbright Commission where students call us in the spring after they've been admitted to their dream school in the US and only then start thinking about how they're going to fund their studies, by which point it's often all too late. So I'd encourage you to start early and be thinking about this throughout the process if you're going to need some of that funding to make studying in the US a reality. You also need to be flexible and strategic, applying to places where your application is really going to stand out. You're going to be in a better position to secure funding, perhaps somewhere that is looking to increase the number of maybe British students on campus, or somewhere where your academic profile is going to be at the top of the range. And finally, applying early decision might be a good option for you. If you're not certain yet that you want to go to the US for your whole degree, then there are some other options. So some UK university courses will allow you to study in the US as part of your degree, and we'll have a number of exchange agreements in place with different US universities. My first experience of studying in the US, as I mentioned, was through this kind of program. And it was by far the best year of my university experience. So it can be a good option for some students and means that you won't have to pay US tuition for the time that you're out there. In particular, American Studies degrees often have a year abroad option, and that was what took me to the University of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest for that 1 year of my undergraduate degree. So how can Fulbright help you going forward? Well, our website, as you may have seen, features a detailed guide on the US application process, as well as support for teachers and advisors. We're available to answer your questions over the phone on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, as well as via email every weekday. We run regular free study in the US seminars every 4 to 6 weeks to look at all of this in detail. So you can check out our website for any upcoming events. And of course, College Day. We're really pleased that you're joining us for this event. It's a really great opportunity to ask questions, to demonstrate your interest, and actually get FaceTime with the people who in some cases may actually end up reading your application. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, and we'll see you at USA College Day.